Welcome back to another video on my channel, everybody. So today we're going to be doing something pretty familiar. We're going to be playing some good old Beyond All Reason. So I thought I'd do today just a beginner guide to the game, because last video, I did a showcase. So I thought maybe, I'd follow that up with a little beginner's guide just to get you guys going if you did want to play bar. So first off, I'm going to show you where to get it. You come over here to this website. It's called beyondallreason.info. And then you just come over here, you hit play, you download it, and then you get this little application. You open it, you install it, and then essentially all it does is it launches the starting application here. And then once you're in the game, you can go ahead and make an account. All right, real quick. I know, I'm at work, and yes, my job is lame, but hopefully that means someday I'll be able to turn content creation into my job. But I just want to thank you guys, because you are above 99% of people who watch my videos. So thank you so much, and I'll let you get back to it. There's some things that I need to explain that I did not explain in my last video. So when you're playing in a match that's, for example, 8v8, so there's these 3 metal nodes here. So those will essentially be your starting slots for players. When you log into a match that has players in it, these spots will be labeled. So these spots are all called frontline spots. These 4 locations here to start from are frontline. And then these ones are backline. These kind of have different meanings. So for example, I think this one is an eco position. And then this might be the air position. And then this might be back support for front. Essentially, your goal is to just scale and help your team out as much as possible while also scaling and, trying to get things done. For example, all of the players in the game except for Eco will ignore tier 2 until the Eco position gives them a tier 2 unit. Essentially, in early game, your goal as an Eco player is to rush tier 2 as fast as possible. So there's different ways you can do that. I can explain them in a little bit, but we're just going to move on to the rest of the roles. Air, I would say, is one of the hardest roles in the game. But um, frontline, I would say, is the second hardest next to air. Frontline is relatively simple, but it does take a lot of skill. And then the back positions here are going to be what you want to start as when you're starting out playing in matches. Now, I'm explaining these roles, but I would recommend you guys start learning in bot lobbies first, just to get a hang of the game and, an understanding of how the units work, how the buildings work, how the systems work and whatnot in the game. Once you do start playing those bot lobbies, you'll understand the game a lot better, and you can move into the player lobbies. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and choose this position right here. So this would be frontline. Another thing that I want to quickly explain here is, so each of these frontline positions, right? So this one, the lane. So if you've ever played League of Legends, you have lanes. So for example, this frontline position wants to cover essentially all of this area right here. I mean, it's a rough outline area, but it is a lane. You just want to cover this side if you're choosing that position. This spot is called Rainbow because essentially you're in the middle of a bunch of units, and your units will look like a rainbow because you're fighting red, blue, green, fucking pink, and all kinds of shit. But this is a lane. Your goal in this lane is to take control of this area here, and you're gonna end up fighting probably right here because this lane wants to push up here, and so this becomes like the main contested point of that lane right there. These 2 lanes just kind of help each other out, although there is sort of a divider in the middle of them. There's not any structures except for these couple ones here that divide their lanes, so they just kind of help each other out and support each other while also trying to push the lanes. So that's just an interesting way to explain that. Is there is lanes in this map. Now every map will be different, there's different starting positions, but this is by far the most popular map that people play on and do 8v8s on. So another thing we have down here is keybinds. Keybinds are going to be very important. If you get used to the keybinds, then you're going to be a lot quicker than somebody who needs to click through the menus and find what they're looking for. So for example, the keybind for a metal extractor is going to be Z and then Z again. All right, so when you want to build something, you can go ahead and shift left click to queue it up. So we queue up all these metal nodes here so that our commander is going to, go to this one first, build this one, to build this one. So if you want to build something in the queue really quickly, like say you're stalling out on power and you need power now. Because if you don't power your metal extractors, they don't extract metal. All you do is you hold space and then you left click, and it'll put something in front of the queue and then keep the queue still going. If you just go ahead and you place this, it's going to clear the entire queue. And that's not something that you want if you're trying to build, if you're trying to build a lot of stuff, essentially, because then you have to place it down again, and that's not fun. All right, so we're going to shift click all these metal extractors here. You always want to build all three as soon as possible. Once you have your metal extractors built, all you're going to do is place, I would say, probably 2 to 4 wind turbines to start off early game. And maybe if you wanted to, you could do solar collectors instead of turbines. I'm just going to place wind turbines because I feel like it. It also depends on the map because, as I said,
battle started.
It also depends on the map because wind speed is a variable and it is always going to be changing. So once you get those metal extractors down and your commander starts building these wind turbines, after your wind turbines are done, all you want to do is build a bot lab. So a lot of people like to build ticks first because it helps with, it just helps with vision and stuff like that, getting units out to be able to see stuff, so you don't get any leaks and anybody else's ticks that are coming towards your base and stuff like that. It really helps to have vision. And also, something that is very important is keeping pressure on your enemy. So say if I wanted to take this tick, right, and if I got one metal node with this, like a metal extractor, if I destroyed one metal extractor with this tick that's worth 21 metal, okay? This tick is worth 21 metal. And I destroyed a metal extractor that's worth 50 metal and that produces metal. That is a lot of value for what we're using in terms of resources. So what you don't want to do is let your enemy do whatever they want, because if they do whatever they want, they can essentially play the game for free. And then, it's just a game of who can scale faster. So after you're done with those ticks, usually you want to build 2 construction bots, and then you can have them, and then you can have the construction bot guard the lab here just to build it a little bit faster. But as you can see, the wind is a little bit rough at the moment. This is kind of when I would go and place a solar collector just to get that extra bit of power. And so right now what I would do is have my commander and this construction bot here just go start building all these metal extractors up here while also walking towards the front, because it is important to get to the front. Now this is very important for this map. A lot of maps are different. On this map, this is exactly what I would do. Just try to get all the metal nodes as fast as possible. And then what you can do is you can build another construction bot once you have a decent amount of power, because construction bots are mostly power. They are 1600 energy to produce and then 110 metal. Now, something that's really important is to just always be doing something. If your units aren't doing anything, then that's bad. You can tell these construction bots to, go and collect all of these metal nodes here. Because once we have more metal, we can start, producing more units, and essentially, then we can start having fun. Now, something I will say is important is going to be your energy storages and metal storages, because once you're wasting metal and energy, that literally disappears. It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't get stored. It doesn't queue up. it disappears. Once you're wasting it, that's wasting it and it's gone. So something that is important is to get these storages up. I wouldn't say now is when you would do that, but I just wanted to give you an example and explain. Um, and then something that is also important in the front line is getting a radar tower down, just so we can see, where the enemies are coming from and whatnot. So as you can see here, this is a big radius that we can see enemy units from. Early game, there's not going to be any radar jamming bots, so you won't have any issues with that. People going around the radius is a different story, but it is pretty helpful to have that early game. And then, so another thing that is important is, on this map at least, is getting a bot lab in the front down. Now, once this bot lab in the front is down, you can actually just go ahead and reclaim this one, because we don't need it anymore. We don't need to have two bot labs essentially. So once you get a bot lab in the front down, you can start producing more units. And maybe if you wanted to, you can build some construction turrets. Construction turrets are really good because they're always going to be trying to repair things that get damaged, as well as, keep producing units for you to use.
Low power.
Keep producing units for you to use to contest the enemy and to contest the space that's on the map. Now, you can see here in the middle of the map, I would say this is the middle, yeah. This is about the middle. This is where you would be fighting. There are a lot of 3.2 metal nodes. So essentially all that means is it's going to give you more. It's going to give you more metal per second. So this one gives 1.8, but this one in the middle here gives 3.2. So those are going to be pretty important points, and they're going to be all along this middle section here. So these are going to be what is fought for, and whoever controls these is essentially going to be, gaining more resources than the enemy. Now, another thing that I do want to explain really quickly is reclaim units. Reclaim units are really good because reclaiming resources and whatnot is a very important thing in this game. So, for example, if I'm going to go ahead and just show you real quick. All right, so control B is self-destruct. So we're just going to go ahead and self-destruct these units real quick just so we can see what this kind of looks like. So what should have happened is there should have been a number that appears under where the units have been destroyed. And, for example, you can go ahead like this. You can click on your reclaiming unit. You can hover over it and then click either this button, or you can click E, and then you can hold left click and drag, and it will reclaim these rocks here. These rocks are going to be metal. There's different maps that have trees on them that you can reclaim for energy. This one looks like it only has metal, so we're just going to go ahead and drag left click, and then he's going to reclaim this metal here. This clump of rocks is not worth a lot. It's only worth about 92 as it's at.
Metal.
But it is going to help you out and is something to keep in mind. And early game reclaim is definitely very important. I would say as it gets closer to the later game, it becomes less important, but it is still something that is important. All right, so once you're at this point and you're gaining a lot of metal, what you can go ahead and do is you can click on your construction bot. Oh, dude, I fucked up. All right, so I forgot to explain something that is pretty important. There are a lot of different labs. So for example, there's vehicle lab, there's an aircraft plant, a bot lab, hovercraft, and there's also a naval shipyard. Of course, there's not any water on this map, so that's not going to really important. So when you go Armada, usually you'll go into bot lab because the bots in Armada are better than they are in Cortex. But the vehicles in Cortex are better than they are in Armada. So you have all kinds of different units here. You can see them at the bottom, just a brief, little snippet of each unit. But I'm just going to be covering the bot lab because I think bots are much easier to start off as a beginner. So, once you have enough metal, you can go ahead and build that tier 2 bot lab and get started with the tier 2 whatnots. So there's a lot of units in tier 2, as you can see here. They're all pretty cool, But the main thing that you want to do once you do get tier 2 is you want to build a tier 2 construction bot. A tier 2 construction bot is what's going to essentially get you all your tier 2 buildings. And it's going to be, I would say, the most important tier 2 unit. So we're going to go ahead and queue that up real quick. We just got to build some power here for a minute because we are stalling out on power heavily. Another thing I will explain really quickly is when you're building wind turbines, it is a good idea to space them out, because if you don't space them out, they chain react on each other and they explode. And then all of a sudden, your base has been exploded. Alright, so once you get Tech 2, the main thing you want to do when you get Tech 2 is upgrade all your existing metal extractor. Because, so when you have a metal extractor, it's going to give you 1.8 metal per second on a default metal node. But actually, when you get a tier 2 metal extractor, what is going to give you is, I believe this, on a 1.8 node, it's going to give me 7.3 metal per second. And that is a crazy difference in how much metal per second it's going to give you. Another thing I do want to say is,
You are wasting
once you're
energy.
done with your other lab, you always want to reclaim it. It's not a good idea to have more than one lab down at a time. There's a lot of units in here. I'm not going to explain counters to every unit because
You are wasting metal.
1, I don't know. 2, this is a beginner guide. So honestly, just build whatever looks cool and whatever you want. You can, see a brief overview of every unit here. This is a mortar / skirmishing bot. That boy is going to be a heavy plasma bot. Archangel is heavy amphibious anti-air, which is really good for anti-air if you didn't know. And then you have some cool units here, as for example, the Ghost is going to be a radar invisible spy bot. Very cool that. So once you're at this stage of the game where you have tier 2 down and you get your tier 2 metal extractors up, maybe you want to go into a fusion reactor. Fusion reactors are really good. They help you out a lot. They give you a lot of power. So at this stage, once you've got your fusion reactor down, I'm just going to build some butlers here so I get this down faster. Butlers are really good for, their build power. They have 140 build power as opposed to the tier 1's
power.
80 build power. And they're not as expensive as the tier 2 construction bot. And they also move really fast. Although the tier 2 constructor does have 210 build power. I would say butlers are really good for building wind turbines and whatnot, and just honestly scaling your power as well as your energy converters. All right, so I am making an example of myself right now. This is never what you want to do. You never want to be at 0 power because 1, your metal extractors are not going to be being used. And 2, it is a bad idea to be at 0 power because, for example, if you had units that were on the front line, they cost power to fight things and to fire their weapons. So when you have 0 power, it's just really bad. Try to not ever have 0 power. Alright, so now we got this fusion reactor down. He's really cool. He gives us a lot of power. And I would say at this stage you can start building energy converters. Energy converters are really good because they convert energy into metal. I'm going to build some tier 1 energy converters here just because I don't want to build tier 2. I think that would be too much power. Energy converters are really good because they convert energy into metal. That's just going to give us extra metal. And now you can see this slider here. This is going to be the threshold that we want to be able to give our energy converters power. So for example, if you need a lot of power, you can set that bar to here. But if you're not as worried about it, you can set it to really low. But you can set it down here to feed your energy converters all the power that they want. Now you can see here, energy converter usage is going to be at 100%. Going to be giving us plus 10 metal. Going to be using 700 energy. I believe that's per second. But we're producing 1500, so we're sitting good. You can see here that we're currently using 759, and we're gaining 1500. We're using 0 metal and gaining 43 at the moment. Everything that I'm saying here can be used at any point in the game. I'm not going to explain the correct order to build all of these things. I'm just trying to give you guys an idea of what everything is in the game and, how you can use it. I might make another guide, the optimal route to build every single thing in the game and, speed run tier 2 or, speed run like a tier 2 construction bot, or speed run a nuke. That's something that people do a lot. But honestly, right now, I'm just trying to give you a brief idea of what the game is, how to play it, and how to use the systems in the game. All right. So, one thing that I will explain is um, static defenses. Static defenses are really good. They're really good, pretty much at all points in the game, up until basically tier 3. So I'm just going to build a tier 3 lab here, just so you guys can see. We're going to tell this unit to guard all this one, so it'll build it as fast as possible. Up until you get tier 3, static defenses are pretty good. Now, there obviously are counters to static defenses. I would say that tier 1 static defenses are probably good for about 5 minutes into the game. Up until, your enemy sees that you have static defenses and they start building the counter to the static defenses, which is the long-range rocket bots. They actually say, good for static defenses on them. Actually, I have a lab up here. I'll go. So I believe it's this one. Yep. This is a Rocketeer bot. It's good versus static defenses, but that's really all it's good for. So if you wanted to, you can mix like, say 5 Rocketeer bots and maybe a couple tankier bots. So for example, the tankier bot is Centurion in Armada. So what you can do is you can mix them together to create sort of a anti-static defense kind of movement here. So I'll just go ahead, we'll do like 5 Rocketeer bots, and then we'll do a couple Centurions. All right, so what we can do here is we can like say, oh, if there's a static defense like right here, the range is probably going to be about here if it's a tier 1. So what we can do is, we can send these guys in, we can have these guys come behind them, and just kind of like, hover them here while also trying to get these guys in range of the static defenses. But we want to try to make it so that the Rocketeer bots don't get hit by the static defenses, because they are glass cannons. We want the tanks to be hit. Yeah, just get used to like moving units around and whatnot, and just right click dragging, trying to just make it so where your units in the backline aren't getting hit, because clustering units like this is probably the best way that you can improve early game. Just knowing what units synergize well and counter other units well. So once tier 2 static defenses come up, I would say that until tier 3, there are certain tier 2 bots that are good against static defenses, and there are a lot of things that you can do. I'm not going to explain them in this video because that's a bit more of a complicated concept. But just know that static defenses are good until a certain point. Essentially, once they get destroyed and you don't know how they're getting destroyed, that's when you should probably steer away from them. And obviously don't bank on static defenses and, use all your metal to build static defenses, because you do need units as well. So as you can see here, we have all the tier 3 units that are going to be obviously very cool and very expensive, but, something to keep in mind. Now, another thing I want to explain real quick is long-range radar as well as radar jamming. So in the utility tab here, we have the advanced radar tower. This is going to be a long range radar. It's going to be a lot longer range than the basic radar. It's obviously going to be blocked by certain structures and whatnot, but we have that. And then there's also the pinpointer, enhanced radar targeting. So it just makes your units shoot more accurately, and it gives you a more pinpoint location. As to our sonar is kind of like it's sending out waves, like a wave of energy, but the pinpointer is
You
going
are
to give you
wasting metal.
a more accurate picture of where they are and where they're going, instead of just like a radar sending out a beep beep and then updating where the dot is going, because your units do actually shoot where the dot is and not where they think the unit is going to go. And then we have here the veil. All right, so the long range jamming tower is essentially just going to give you an area. You can see here's the red line that's right here. It's a pretty large area that where if somebody has a radar tower, they aren't going to be able to see your units or your buildings in this radius. So it is good if you want to like have a long range unit and you can set them on the edge of this, essentially so that they can't be detected by radar and shot out of their range or out of the vision. You can see here this gives me a certain vision. Everything has kind of a vision score, as well as a shooting range. This unit will only see a unit if it comes into its range, or if it comes into its vision, and then it will only shoot if it comes into its range. But for example, if we build a fat boy right here, these have a really long range. The fat boy is going to have a range of 700 and a line of
Low
sight of
power.
510. So the range is going to be higher than the line of sight. So it's gonna not be able to see as far as it can shoot. It can shoot essentially into the darkness if you have radar and you know where to fire. Now, something that you can do is if you know something is there, you can literally just tell it to attack. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to explode my wind turbines just so you can see. I'm just going to tell him to attack the ground here, and he's going to shoot. You can just tell them to attack where you want them to attack. All right, you can see there, chain reacted, pretty cool. Um, and you can see here our construction turrets are repairing that, which is pretty good. So you want a decent amount of construction turrets because if your buildings do get attacked, then you can repair them. If you blow up a fusion reactor though, it makes a big boom, as well as the advanced fusion reactor. One last thing that I want to go over before I end this video is just the nuke system. So you have nukes, you can disable them in the game or in your match if you want to, but if you don't, then obviously there's a threat of getting fucking nuked. And you can see here we have our Armageddon, our nuclear ICBM launcher. We can go ahead and build it
Low
here real
power.
quick. I'll just fucking cut this part out because it's gonna take forever. Alright, so once your nuclear missile launcher is built here, it's going to require a lot of power to build those missiles. You can't just have it up instantly and nuke somebody. I'm just going to build some power real quick because we are stalling out on the power front. So once your missile gets done, you can go ahead and launch it. You can say attack, and then you can tell it to attack here. Wherever your enemy is in the back line there. Usually you want to go for their actual main infrastructure and their base, or their commander. Commander bombs or commander nukes are really good because essentially they just one-shot the commander. Now really the only way you can go about countering this is in tier 2 Armada. You can build an umbrella, which is a mobile all-terrain anti-nuke. That's going to be a relatively short range anti-nuke, but it is going to be pretty efficient. Or you can go ahead and build a citadel, which is just an anti-nuke. That's something that you should try to get up if you do have nukes enabled relatively soon, because people do rush nukes and then you're just kind of sat there like, what, when your base gets nuked like that. So something that you should be aware of. All right, well, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And if you want to see more content like this, go ahead and just leave it down in the comments, or just let me know what you want to see.
Commander taking heavy damage.
But yeah, let me know if you guys want to see more of this and what you want me to do next. If you guys want, I can make a more in-depth guide on how to actually play the game. And keep in mind, I'm not very good at the game, so I can't really, you know, say I'm a professional and be like, oh, blah 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 blah, you should do this and this and this. But I'm not. I'm definitely not a professional by any means, and I have no clue what I'm doing most of the time. But I do know that I have fun. Hopefully, you guys have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye. Oh, I farted again. Oh, yes.